And we are having two presentations, so keep in mind that after the first one ends, there's a second presentation, and then after that, you can ask us for the vouchers if you need any. And if you have any questions, we'll be there. Now, our first presenters are from Laredo Public Health, so I'll go ahead and have them come over and they can start their presentation. Thank you again for being here with us.
Hi, good morning. Well, my name is Stephanie. I am a case manager with Suicide Health, which is a mental health program at Laredo College Health. But before we start, we do have pre and post assessments for those of you that are here in for the presentations. Can you all raise your hand? That way I can pass out the form super quick. Okay, so kind of loud. I'm just gonna ask for you guys to do the first where it says pre. It's just like the first 5 questions. If you guys can do that super quick, please. We just want to see where you all stand, like a before and after on this presentation. But while you guys are doing that, like I said, I am the case manager for Laredo Public Health. We do work with people 18 years and up, and we service those who have symptoms of anxiety and depression. So if you know anybody that's interested, it may be yourself or a family member, you all are really welcome to send them our way. So let's begin. Why is suicide awareness important? Suicide awareness is important because it's actually the second leading cause of death among young adults. So currently we are in a mental health crisis. There's not enough LPCs, counselors for the amount of people that are experiencing mental health issues. Down here we do have a few statistics. This is from 2023-24. So it does say that 60 million Americans experienced mental health illnesses within this past year, and 13 million of those reported serious thoughts of suicide. So we could just imagine how this is really affecting us. Another reason as to why suicide awareness is important is because talking open about suicide actually breaks the silence and it reduces shame, making it easier for people to seek help. A lot of times we think because we speak about suicide or we talk to someone asking them if they have these thoughts that we're giving them the idea, but that's actually not true. We're giving them the space to be open and speak about what's causing them these issues. And then another reason is awareness fosters broader conversations about depression, anxiety, trauma, and other underlying issues. Because we now speak about this, we now understand that when we have like these types of thoughts, it's because of deeper issues. It could be because of anxiety, trauma. You know, we probably have some childhood issues that we haven't been able to deal with, and we start figuring out what it is that's causing these issues for you. Common stressors for students. So you all probably know this more than anybody. I don't think I have to explain this too much, but a few of these are here. You all do have to deal with these academic pressures and these major expectations that we have from our families or from friends or from just ourselves. We put these expectations on ourselves, and sometimes it's just real hard to keep going, especially when we have family issues or financial stresses. We can feel alone or even homesick for those that aren't from here or they leave. Substance use is also pretty connected to mental health issues, and identity struggles being gender, sexuality, or culture.
Alrighty, so warning signs to look for, recognizing these signs. So first it's going to be what we can see externally as far as like if we're talking to a friend or talking to another individual. So major mood changes, withdrawals. So maybe you noticed your friend or used to be the life of the party, like to go out with you, used to go to a movie or anything like that. They no longer want to do these things. Sometimes it's a rapid change ideations or like Stephanie had mentioned before, experiencing depression, anxiety, which eventually could lead to suicidal ideations. Hopelessness, so hopelessness would be these examples that we put here. So talking about topics like death, being a burden, feeling trapped, saying goodbye. So one of the things like saying goodbye wouldn't necessarily be like, hey, bye, right? That's kind of a normal statement to make when you're no longer leaving or not speaking to somebody. A big indicator could be like if they start giving their stuff away, you start giving your stuff away, and be like, oh, well, like, I don't need, I don't know, it could be big things. It could be like, I no longer need my laptop because, or whatever, so-and-so. So they start giving away their laptop or giving away their prized possessions, even just little things like articles of clothing. So the reason they start doing this is because, they're like, well, I have no use for it. Maybe like, this is the momentum for me to lead to like the people I care about. So that's definitely a big indicator as well that sometimes we might not catch on to, but we should definitely be keeping a lookout for that as well. And irritability. That one kind of goes a little bit with the withdrawal. If you notice that these major mood changes, they're getting a little bit more anxious, irritable. You bring up certain topics and it's kind of like the trigger for them. That's definitely going to be a sign as well. So kind of like how I mentioned, goes with the hopelessness, the saying goodbye, risky behaviors, giving away possessions. That can also go in hand with suddenly seeming at peace after you notice all these signs, and now they're kind of back to normal, right? They're back to normal, they're talking to you normally, maybe you guys have been talking about a situation that they were feeling down, something like that, and now they feel like everything's okay, right? It's okay to bring up like, hey, what happened? You were like kind of in a bad space, now you're in a good space, what changed? To see what's going on there. And increase in substance use, so if they were previously using substances and that was getting a little out of hand, or maybe started using substances again, like newly, that's definitely a sign as well. And then we can also add some other examples: decline in academic performance, decline in sleep, appetite, decline in interaction with friends, family, and or activities. Okay, so some different coping strategies. So of course, everybody's different. The same coping strategies aren't going to work for everybody, but these are just a few examples on ways if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling like you're having these ideations, this is definitely something that you can do to lessen these negative feelings. So physical activity. At home, we kind of do kind of like an integrated behavioral health thing. We are with the Laredo College Health Department, so sometimes when people are going to see their primary care provider, they'll come and see us, right? Because you never know, maybe something physically, when you're not feeling good physically, sometimes it's going to affect you mentally. So some things you can do is just exercising, whether it's, I don't know, Pilates, running, jogging, going to the gym. I mean, exercise is different for everybody. Which you can do a short walk, you can do yoga. There's definitely some different options as far as that. Mindfulness and meditation, so practicing breathing exercises, you can do guided meditation, that doesn't necessarily have to be something that you do on your own as well. So the good thing about this is a lot of these can be group things, it can be with somebody that you care about, somebody that you trust, somebody that you can do these things together with. So guided meditation, you can always put on a YouTube video as well. There's different ways to do that. Creative outlets, so everybody's different. If you like to draw, go ahead and take that time. I know it can be kind of hard, especially as college students. If you're full-time working, full-time student, it's hard to find that time, but you should try to find that time in the things that you enjoy. You can draw, if you like to sing, if you like to play a certain instrument, dancing, doing crafts. I mean, anything that you enjoy to do, it is good to take at least 30 minutes out of your day just to, have that release of stress for yourself. Social connection. So reach out to family and friends if you don't necessarily have any of those. I've always recommended, maybe you have a professor that you really trust. You have counselors here, we have case managers here. I'm sure that
Would anyone like to share any coping strategies that they do? By any chance? No? I'll tell you mine. I am a huge fan of yoga, so I do a lot of yoga. I love to be with my friends. For creative outlets, it's making music. I do have a little bit of everything. Meditation, I am very big on meditation. And before I turn into this one, I do want to say that Eagles River Health does offer services such as meditation. We have art class, we have Weekly for Wellness. These are all offered Wednesday through Friday at the Salinas Center. So if you are interested, join us. That is at the Salinas Center from 10:30 to 12. So what to do if you're worried about a friend? Number one, of course, notice. Hey, I've seen you seem kind of down lately. We've seen our friends, when they're usually happy, they usually go out with us. They're usually very energetic and their mood has shifted. We can ask them what's going on, right? And ask directly. We tend to really like to beat around the bush and not really just go straight for that question, but sometimes ripping off the Band-Aid will help a lot more than just, hey, you're okay, right? Okay, no, you're not okay. What's going on? Tell me. Are you thinking about killing yourself? You can ask them this type of question. Like I said earlier, we do think that us asking this question might give them the idea, but in reality, it could get them to speak to you. You know what, I have been having these thoughts because of X, Y, Z. Alright. The other one is listening without judgment. This one's actually kind of hard because especially when we're really close to our friends, and let's just say our friend Harmony tells me, hey, I did this, and it's something we've been hey, I've been telling you don't do that. She's like, you know what, I did it, and now this happened, right? Now I'm experiencing this domino effect, and things are not going my way. And what's the first thing I'm gonna say as my friend? I told you, why did you do that? I told you. So now she's gonna be closed off to even telling me well, yeah. She's not gonna want to tell me, why she did that. She's not gonna want to open up to me about her situations anymore. So the way we go about, listening without judgment can, we don't mean it that way. I know we don't, but it is taken that way when our friends are already in a low phase. What's that saying? Don't pick a dead horse. Or beating a dead horse. Yeah, basically don't pick them up down. So, a way to go about it, you just validate it. You don't have to put in your input, just listen to them. Most of the time when we remain quiet, people tend to just keep on, just telling you what it is that they're feeling at that moment. So that's what I mean by listening without judgment. Connect, of course, encourage professional help, walk them to the resources if needed. Sometimes it's very hard for them to take themselves to these resources or to these places. So if we know that they are experiencing these issues, they already told you they are having these types of ideations, symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of depression, it's okay to offer them, to hold their hand if they're in pain. Let me take you here. It could help. Offering them that little help could do a world of difference to some people. And don't promise secrecy. So if they do say, I do want to kill myself, I already have an idea, I think I'm going to plan it out this day, it's not best for you to stay quiet. You might think you're helping them, okay, it's my friend, secret forever. But, you speaking out could essentially save their lives. So don't promise secrecy. Myths versus facts. So, myth. Talking about suicide gives people the idea. I've been saying it actually does not. It could actually prevent suicide. We do have the myth of people with diagnosed mental illness. Only people with diagnosed mental illnesses are at risk, and that is not true. Anyone can struggle regardless of diagnosis. You do not have to be diagnosed with depression to be sad. You don't have to be diagnosed with anxiety to be fearful. Sometimes, we experience things in life and times where we are going to experience sadness, and sometimes that's normal. We just need to know how to distinguish being sad to being very sad. There's different little, areas to the differences. myth is people who talk about suicide just want attention. It could just be a cry for help. It's not attention. They're actually asking you for help. They just don't really say, hey, I need your help right now. Come here, like, help me with this. That just might be the cry.
So suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Direct compassionate conversations can reduce feelings of isolation and safety. So just kind of digging it into you guys a little bit more, right? Do not be afraid to ask these questions. Do not be afraid to talk about it. If you think somebody else is experiencing these feelings, if you're experiencing it, it's not going to encourage anybody to, commit suicide, think about suicide. It's not going to bring up a conversation that's possibly going to, end in something that we can't come back from. It's very important to bring it up so that people know that there are these resources, and that it's okay to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, then how are we ever going to know? How are we going to get that help? So suicide prevention on a personal level. So strengthen your support network. Kind of like I was mentioned before, one of those coping skills were social connection. So social connection, if you have some really good friends, talk to them, confide in them, build that relationship with them, let them know that you're there if they need anything. Same thing with your family. If you have a really close family, you can go ahead and let them know, hey, I've been feeling this way, or hey, I've noticed this about you. Kind of what we've been reiterating, like don't be afraid to open up that conversation. Prioritize wellness of mind and body. So same thing, things that you enjoy. Take some time out of your day to do some things that you enjoy. If you want to just sit down for a bit, listen to some music, listen to a podcast, if you want to just doodle a little bit, just take care of yourself, and if you feel good physically, you're going to feel good mentally. Develop coping strategies and stress relief skills. So those are just a couple of coping strategies that we have given you before. Maybe you guys already have some strategies that you use yourself. Maybe you've heard some other strategies that maybe we didn't mention. I mean, anything that works for you, as long as it's not causing harm to yourself or to anybody else. That's definitely something that you should be trying to practice at least on a daily basis. Limit isolation during tough times. So I know it's very common for a lot of us that when we feel down, when we go through a bad situation, we just kind of want to stay in our room, stay in our bed, not do anything, right? But talk about it. I know I keep saying it over and over again, but talk about it to somebody that you trust, whether it be a friend, a family, maybe somebody at the school, the counselor, a professor that you trust. I think there's going to be somebody who is going to be willing to listen. Keep crisis resources handy. So I don't know if you guys had seen in the back, we did have a couple of pamphlets, a couple of papers that do have some resources on them. We're also going to offer you some in the next slide. You're more than welcome to take a picture if you'd like to do that. You're more than welcome to ask questions as well. But yeah, there's a lot of resources here in Laredo, especially on your campus especially. If you have more questions about it, you're more than welcome to reach out to us, to reach out to one of our counselors here. So find me. What brings you joy, pride, or connection? So that kind of goes as well with the prioritize wellness of mind and body. So what makes you happy? Who makes you happy? What makes you sad, right? Also understanding, hey, this person doesn't make me feel that good. Or maybe when I do this, it doesn't make me feel that good, right? That way we can differentiate, okay, I should be doing this instead of this. And then lastly, create a safety plan. So a safety plan is basically if you know that you're feeling really sad, or you know that maybe you're possibly going to go through with committing suicide, that's when you would see okay, this is who I trust. I should call this person, or this is what I should do. We'll go a little bit more into depth because I know that there's an app that we're going to show you. We'll go a little bit more into depth about creating a safety plan. But basically, a safety plan is what's going to prevent you from going through with suicidal ideation.
As Harmony mentioned, we did put a few papers out in the back that have pamphlets and information, and one of them does have information on how to create a safety plan. So that in case you, like I said, we did put that information back. Online resources. So these are some apps that you all can download, and this is also this last one. This one over here is also a safety plan, but this can you carry on your phone, so you get to put in the contacts that you find, close to you that help you within a crisis. You put that in there. Your coping strategies, then the virtual hope box also gives you, things to distract yourself in, quotes, poems, how to code. They're really interesting, they're really fun. I have young people that do have these apps, and I have them as well, and they're actually really interesting. So if that interests you, the QR codes are right there, if I take a picture or anything like that.
Okay, so on-campus resources. So here at the South Campus, the location is going to be the Midday Hall Junior Student Center, A208 at College at Health. I have the phone number there, the email, it has office hours, and then you guys also do have online counseling services. So Timely Care, I'm going to be honest, I'm not too familiar with it, but it delivers virtual health and well-being platform for students. If you're enrolled, whether in campus, South Campus, regardless of where you're enrolled, you can access Timely Care. All you gotta do is download the app and then log in with your school email address. So you guys do have the in-person and the online counseling services. As I had mentioned before, you're more than welcome to go ahead and take a picture. If you want us to, give you the resources after the presentation, feel free to come up to us. But just so you guys are aware of these resources that you have here. All right, so now the external resources. So kind of going back to the pamphlets, we do have these listed in the pamphlets, but like I said, we're not welcome to take a picture. So we do have the 98 Suicide Crisis Lifeline call and text. So this one's 24/7. If you or a friend are experiencing suicidal ideation, like you're at your point, you need somebody to talk to, you don't have anyone that you can reach at that moment, the 98 Crisis is available 24/7. So you can always reach out to them. We do have emergency services, call 911 if you are in immediate danger, the Trevor Project, and we do have the SAMHSA, National Hotline for Help. So these are basically like phone numbers, right, if you want to talk to somebody. If you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, you kind of just want to text or you want to go to a website or some more, we do have these as well. So they're pretty much the same things, right? It's the lifeline.org/chat, you want to just text or chat on your computer. The Trevor Project as well, find support about prevention with the ANSP.org. So like I said, we're not going to take a picture or we do have some extra packets.
Yeah, that's about it. Thank you all for having us. Any questions? I want to say thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much to Laredo Public Health. And we, just a friendly reminder that the vouchers will be given after our second presentation. I'll be back there with Ms. Romo. For our second presentation, we are very excited to have Border Region Behavioral Health Center with us. And they're also going to continue this very important conversation. So we'll go ahead and have them come up. Thank you.
I'm Frank Sanchez, one of the supervisors for the CAPS department at Border Region Behavioral Health Center, also a suicide prevention coordinator and trainer. Thank you all for being here. It's a very important topic that we're going to be talking about. We do this year-round. Suicide prevention is a public health concern. It is something that we have to be able to address and know how to lead those individuals to the right help that they might need. Some of us in the audience, how many of you in the audience have been impacted by suicide? Anybody? Raise your hands. Anybody? Okay. There's typically a lot of folks that have been impacted or know of, like Chris Cornell, the lead singer from Lincoln Park as well, took his life. Nirvana. So we have to be careful when events like this happen, tragic events, because some people say there's certain individuals that had everything going for them. So suicide does not discriminate. It cuts across all racial and socioeconomic lines. And it doesn't impact just the poor. Like I said, it crosses all lines. So we have to be cognizant of those things that we are facing in today's society and always connect. Like the previous presenter said, connect to somebody that is trusting. All right? And I have here Sara Zamora, who's going to start the presentation. She is the supervisor on the adult side for Border Region. So I'm going to pass the microphone to her so we can start the presentation.
Thank you for having us. Again, my name is Sara Zamora. I'm one of the supervisors for adult services at Boulder Region Behavioral Health Center. We're a community clinic that provides services for mental health and behavioral health, right? So we're going to be building on the wonderful presentation by the health department. So we're going to move on to talk about why language matters, right? And how important it is not only to talk about suicide, to ask those questions about suicide, but to do it in the right way. So before we start, we want to do a trauma-informed disclosure and let you know that, of course, this presentation will cover the topic of suicide care, including prevention, intervention, and post-vention strategies. And we know this is a very sensitive, triggering topic. So to create the safest environment possible, we invite you to take breaks during the presentation as needed. This is not a long presentation, but if you need a break, feel free to do that. And also a reminder to call or text at 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline, or even text the word TX to the number 741-741 if you become distressed and need support. And just the same way we're available, whoever is not presenting, if you need to reach out to any of us for any questions, feel free to do so. So remember to take care of yourselves, right? Even as we go over this presentation. Okay, so this is a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about why we use the words that we use when we talk about suicide. We're going to be talking about safe messaging in training and reporting when it comes to the topic of suicide, and safe messaging about suicide in social media. But we're going to start with an awareness check, a little bit of a quiz, right? Is this true or false? There are national best practice guidelines available to help guide conversations about suicide. What do you all think? Is this true or false? Anybody? Raise your hands if you think it's true. Okay. It is true. There's different resources available that are reliable, evidence-based resources. One is the Rock Foundation Language Matters in Mental Health, the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention and Safe Messaging, and Reporting on Suicide website. So feel free to take a picture if you need to, so that you can have those available or have easy access to them. So now, as we talk about the right way or the safe way to talk about suicide, we have some, let's say, do's and don'ts, right? These are some examples of ways of talking about suicide that wouldn't be safe, right? One of them is completed suicide, or successful suicide, committed suicide. Why do you think those are not safe, or not the most appropriate ways of talking about suicide? Anybody? Insensitive, right? That's right. Exactly, very good. It makes it glorified, like you said. Glorified, like it's something positive, right? So the way that we talk about things helps, create or conveys a message too, right? So saying committed suicide, for example, that word carries a connotation of committing a crime. That's what we use that word for. Committing a crime, committed to a hospital, right? So we don't want anything that would be, or use any words that could be stigmatizing when it comes to individuals that might be experiencing thoughts of suicide. Also means restriction, when we're trying to make sure that the individual doesn't have access to anything they could use to possibly attempt suicide, right? However, those words could sound stigmatizing or judgmental, right? So on the right side, you can see when it comes to fighting stigma. So again, as we talk about suicide, we want to make sure and that we take into consideration that, like Frank mentioned, most people have been touched by suicide one way or another because it's such a common problem. It's one of the leading causes of death in the United States and in the world, right? So we want to consider that about half of any audience, no matter where you are, has some form of lived experience with suicide. So the words that we use can really impact a person's willingness to reach out and seek help if they're struggling. It can affect their healing and recovery journey, right? So again, suicide is a topic that's not easy to talk about. It's difficult. So if we use words or language that's stigmatizing, that's judgmental, that can be keeping somebody that needs help from asking for help or reaching out for help. So one thing that we want to do, that we want to remember when we talk about suicide is to offer hope, right? Always do it in a tone that promotes a message of hope. And always share resources. We know and we have been trained that every time we talk about mental health, that we talk about our services, that we talk about suicide, it is a responsibility to share the resources available, any crisis lines, like the 988, the text line, or even just let people know that they can contact 911 if anything else, if nothing else is available, right? So it is a responsibility every time we bring up the subject that we offer resources. We also want to stay with the person until help is available. That's another thing that's very important. If you are asking a question about suicide, there's always that possibility of that anxiety, like, well, what if this person tells me that they are having suicidal thoughts? What am I going to do? Right? So that's why those resources are available. But while that professional help arrives, we never leave an individual that is suicidal alone. Right? We always need to make sure that even if we have to physically go and get help somewhere else, that we get somebody else to stay with that person. Right? That's very important. Other thing that we want to remember is to ask directly. I know that in the previous presentation that was stressed a lot, right? Don't be afraid of asking a question. We have that myth, that we believe that I don't want to give them the idea, right? If I ask them about suicide, like maybe they were not thinking about that, and then me asking is going to cause them to think about it. That's never the case, right? More than likely, that person was already experiencing those thoughts, and you asking them is the only way that they're going to be able to talk about it. So it's like this person being in a dark place, and you asking is shedding a light on that darkness, right? So asking directly. Another example of how important it is to be direct is, do you think if I ask somebody, are you having thoughts of hurting yourself? Using the word hurting, would that be helpful? Yes, no, maybe? I see some no's. Any ideas as to why? That they might feel attacked, or that you're being judgmental, maybe like, oh, you're doing something bad, right? I mean, it could be because the word hurting could sound negative, right? But what's another side of it? Can I hurt myself without killing myself? I can, right? So what if the person is not having thoughts of hurting themselves, but they are having thoughts of killing themselves, of actually attempting suicide? That's why asking directly, as hard as it sounds, is crucial so that we can actually get that person to get help. We might be missing very important information if we don't ask directly. But of course, when we ask, we also want to use empathy and compassion. We want to listen non-judgmentally, and we want to believe what they say, right? There's also that myth sometimes that oh, able to like not miss anything. Also, another way or unsafe way would be you're not going to kill yourself, are you? Right? Because if you were already having those thoughts, that question in that tone, in that manner, almost sounds as if like, I'm telling you what you should answer, right? Instead of opening the door for you to be honest with you. Also, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Sometimes that might not be necessarily safe to say because, again, we want to be sensitive to what the person is experiencing. And sometimes, regardless of what the issue is that they're going through, it might feel very much permanent to them, right? What if they're experiencing symptoms of a long and very difficult mental illness or chronic pain that they've suffered for a long time, right? And telling them that, you know, their problem is temporary might not necessarily be the most compassionate way to say it, right? It might be very much permanent to them. So other safer ways of asking those questions could be, again, directly, do you want to kill yourself? Are you thinking about suicide, right? And death by suicide. And other ways, you know, of being safe when we speak about suicide is by avoiding stigmatizing language. Any examples that you guys can think of stigmatizing language when it comes to suicide? Those that you commonly hear, maybe? Just go ahead and do it, right? Yeah, that could be pretty stigmatizing and actually like even encouraging of suicide if the person was already having those thoughts. Or how many times do we hear like, no, like you won't do it. You know, like oh, get over it. You know, focus on the positive, right? All those things might be dismissive and we want to avoid them. Again, simplistic explanations, right? Judgments about the person, like, oh, they're just being selfish, right? You're not thinking about your family. You're not thinking about the people that are going to leave behind, right? And unfortunately, that's not the case. That doesn't mean that the individual that's experiencing suicidal ideations does not care for his or her family. A lot of the times, they feel like they would be better off without them, right? And just letting them phrases like that are going to, you know, increase that sense of being judged. And that may keep it from actually opening up and asking for help. Other things we want to avoid is platitudes and cliches to comfort, right? Again, we go back to that example. Platitudes could be phrases that are kind of like overused, but that are not really safe necessarily because they can be dismissive. Same thing is like everything's going to be okay, you know, just like tomorrow you're going to wake up and it's going to be a new day and everything's going to be better. Just don't worry about it, right? That kind of phrase, that's dismissive. That's not really helpful. So things that we want to do is, again, be clear, direct, and use the word suicide. So there's no room for missing anything. Be non-judgmental, be unconditional as to how the person is feeling. And suicide is a multifaceted and complex problem, right? It cannot be oversimplified by saying like they're going to be fine, everything's going to be good, right? It's a very complex problem that requires a lot of listening and professional help. Any questions so far? No?
All right, like Ms. Zamora was saying, when we ask, our job is to ask directly. When you ask your family and friends, it's something that you don't want to hear. It's going to make us nervous, but at least you're getting this information as to what to do and where to get help for those individuals. Because you never know where you're going to be needing this. because I felt that same way, that I would never lose a friend to suicide, who died by suicide. And as a childhood friend that I grew up with, since elementary, and he went into law enforcement. So, you know, we always say why, and what did we miss? So we want to make sure that we are not judgmental, and that we're not here to point the finger as to where did we go wrong. As an organization, we need to make sure that we find ways to avoid these things from happening, okay? So when it comes to understanding the role of media, the role of media, unfortunately, likes to say committed suicide, and they like to open up the news with the worst news there is. That's media for you. And I cringe every time they say committed suicide, because committed suicide is not, you didn't commit a crime. When you die by suicide, you didn't commit a crime. You don't commit cancer when you die with cancer. So we need to make sure that we also allow good grace to those individuals that need to know what type of language to use, all right? And why? Because there's people in the audience that have lost a loved one, and we want to make sure that we are respectful of those individuals. And when this role of media is not responsible, they can lead to contagions where one individual died in a certain method, then other teenagers might follow suit. And this happened in our surrounding areas of Laredo. The story of duration, the frequency, where they place it, the prominence. And I mentioned at the beginning, those lead singers for those bands that had everything going for them. But we've also had children of doctors in Laredo that have taken their lives. One life taken by suicide is one death too many. So it doesn't matter the socioeconomic lines. And so safe messaging can change the perception and stigma. And remember that suicide is very complex. There's no one reason why people do it. So we always have to make sure that we know what sites to visit to provide this type of safe messaging. Suicide images have to be consistent with safe language and communication for suicide prevention. We cannot depict what happened to an individual and share everything as to location and how. Now, convey a sense of belonging, hope, healing, and recovery. Most effective when stressing everyone's life matters. Everyone's life matters. You matter at the end of the day. And always tell yourself that. Wake up in the morning and say, today is going to be a great day. Positive affirmations go a long way. And if you have some friends going through some down times, talk to them, or family members as well, and let them know that there is help. Negative, violent, or graphic images reinforce stereotypes that can be stigmatizing and unhelpful. And safe communication for suicide prevention means words and images are well planned, helpful, and respectful, like I said. So a checklist for responsible communication. Reporting suicide because it is a public health concern. It is an issue nationwide. If we were to reduce the number of deaths by suicide in Texas and California, we would reduce the number of suicides nationwide tremendously. 2 states, the death by suicide for 2 states, if we were to reduce those numbers, the percentages of people that die by suicide would be impacted in a positive way. So we always have to make sure that we include stories of hope, healing, and recovery. Include resources, provide information on warning signs. When somebody's talking frequently about, I don't belong, I feel like a burden, or they're having crying spells, and this frequency is every day, there is an issue. We have to get help for that individual, even if it's calling 911. But if you call 988, they will send somebody. We have mobile crisis outreach teams that can go out to the home, that can go out to the schools, wherever they're at. On the weekends after hours, it would be the emergency room to get help, immediate help for those individuals. And of course, the 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline and the crisis text line and local helplines are key to keeping They know how to route that information to the appropriate individuals that will respond to a crisis. Along the lines with the responsible communication, we use appropriate language. Emphasize help, stories of recovery through help seeking and positive coping skills as told by people with lived experience. We have to also take those individuals into consideration on how they were impacted. Ask an expert, interview suicide prevention or mental health experts in suicide care, validate facts concerning suicide risk and mental illness. We want to validate that the person is going through something that they can't control, but not validate suicide, okay? Okay, so I understand that you are going through this every time that you experience trauma that you had in the past. So how is it impacting you? And is it okay with you to get someone to help you and get that help? Like the previous presenters mentioned, you have counselors here, you have instructors here that care for you, you have a community that has your back to where you can keep you safe. Suicide safe messaging, once again, the media unfortunately depicts method and location. We don't. Sharing content of suicide, describing personal details. We have to be careful of that and cognizant that family members might not know that a family member took their life. Presenting suicide as a common and acceptable response to hardship, that is not acceptable. We have to make sure we promote death as suicide and keep the location general. Help seeking information about 988. We have 4 call centers in the state of Texas. 4 call centers, and Integral Care is the one that handles those calls for us. And we also have our local 1-800 number, or even if you call for a region after hours on the weekends or holidays, they will send it to the call center. Coping skills, support and treatment. And suicide, remember that it's multifaceted and complex. Even if somebody was to die by suicide when you're getting help for them, don't feel or take it personal. Don't feel that it was your responsibility to save them, because at the end of the day, if that individual wants to die by suicide, it is not your fault, okay? Don't take it personal. Avoid oversimplifying or speculating reasons for suicide. Sensationalizing details, very common in the media. Or when other individuals are talking about this, we need to make sure to say, hey, we have to be respectful. Glamorizing, like I mentioned before, or romanticizing suicide. The best way to do it is promote, describe the warning signs and risk factors. What's the frequency of the thoughts that you're having? How long are they lasting for? That is very important. If you know a friend or family member that is experiencing any type of depression, and then they're talking about hurting themselves to the point where they might end their lives, frequency and duration, method and plan is very important to know. And then you can report that to 911 if you forget that there's a 988 number. That's okay. They'll get it, the help immediately. Use facts and language sensitive to grieving families. We had a lost conference training, and what they told us is listen to the family. They don't want to hear like Ms. Zamora mentioned, it's going to be okay. No, they just went through a loss. They lost a family member, a teenager, a daughter, a son, okay? So we have to be also providing facts and language, and provide the context and the facts always. Don't depend on other search engines that don't provide you with proper information, okay? Avoid overstating suicide by descriptors such as epidemic and skyrocketing. Instead, use research-based data where it says that there's an increase or rise of suicide. Prominent placement, where there's no newspaper anymore in Laredo, but magazines or maybe some newsletters, if they're going to talk about suicide, don't place it in the beginning of the story, okay? Keep them in the middle, okay? Or in the late newscast. But unfortunately, with news that is shared, bad news sells, so they put it at the beginning. All right, here we go. Awareness check. True or false? When discussing suicide or discussing, one should always provide resources such as 988, Crisis Lifeline, There is the numbers. And then we're going to get you more info on this, okay? The 741 text, that's just for texting, and it only works in the United States. It's not going to work in Laredo or in Matamoros or any other place in Mexico. It'll work only in the United States. That number, you get somebody texting with you, which is a counselor, to get you the right help that you need, okay? And there's different ways to text, the 741 text, or home as well. All right, another awareness check. Which of the following should be avoided when messaging about suicide? Attributing suicide to one reason or cause. Presenting suicide as a common way to handle stress. Glamorizing suicide, or all of the above. Which one should we use? You should know this by now. Letter D. Correct. All of the above. So, know how and where to connect to care. Take a picture of this, and when you take a picture of this, in the next slide, it'll say to put in a crisis number, a Trevor hotline. So, a distressful or a veteran, if you have brothers or sisters that might be in the military. These are very important numbers to have. Our crisis after hours calls go to the Avail hotline. That's how we handle crisis for adults and children and adolescents in Laredo and the surrounding counties. If you call Border Region after hours or a holiday, it'll send you to the Avail Crisis Hotline. The National Prevention Line is not going anywhere. We know that it's 988 because they wanted to make it like 911, something simpler. And also texting, like I mentioned, the Trevor Project, American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. And this is very important because Texas is big in guns. They love their guns, but unfortunately, we lead the nation in death by suicide because of that lethal means. Because it's irreversible. We need to find a way to protect and keep our guns safe. And if you have family members that have weapons at home, guns, if you keep them in a safe, put in a picture in the gun law or safe of a loved one or a pet can make that person think twice before reaching for that arm and trying to end their lives. So it's a very important tip to take. And remember, when we connect, we don't want to be going through our phones, veteran crisis hotline, 988 or whatever. Put an A before a veteran crisis hotline, a disaster distress hotline. That is key because it'll get you to those crisis numbers fast. So if you wish, take a picture of this. And remember, at the national level, you don't need to have all the answers. We were telling you that if you call 988 or be present for that person, it might keep them alive. They've always said one word can make a difference in a person's life. A good morning. That shirt or that blouse looks great on you. I know it's a bad hair day, but I'm glad you're wearing a cap. I'm kidding. Okay? But one word can help that person turn that life, a turning point. Just be present. This can be used at any week, but they're promoting it weekly, but it doesn't matter. Suicide touches every community. But remember, so can hope. There is hope for individuals going through these stressful times. Let's build a healthier community. Let's save lives. The more people that are suicide prevention advocates can save lives of individuals that you don't want to lose. Just having the knowledge of where to call. If it's a medical emergency, they're cut themselves, they're bleeding, you don't call 988, you call 911. They need medical clearance first. Okay? Any medical emergency, 911. So how can we say, well, I got a question for you, that's not on here. If you were to have a heart attack in a large city, so that means Laredo's not part of it. If you were experiencing a heart attack, where do you think you would get the help immediately that can save your life? What major city throughout the United States or Texas? Where? San Antonio, why? Bigger facilities, medical centers, right? We don't have them here, okay? And some people would think Houston, because they know MD Anderson and all the hospitals that they have over there. So the answer would be Seattle. And the reason why is because there's more people trained on CPR that can, whenever you're going to have any type of issue with a heart attack, it'll happen out in the community. So more people that are trained, you're alive, you have a higher probability of being saved. So with mental health CPR, when we train on ask about suicide to save a life, if you know what to do, just getting this information about calling 988, calling 911, or texting 741-741-TX, you can save somebody's life. So the more that you know about how to save a person's life with a crisis, then that increases our suicide prevention advocates in our community, and that's what we want to do. So no matter who you are, no matter your story, at the end of the day, you all matter. You all will make a difference in this world to people's lives, to your families, and sometimes you might not get that at home, but remind yourself, we have to break that cycle of failure. And if you're that individual that's going to do it, you will do it. And you have to believe in yourself. So you matter to everybody. So thank you so much for being here in this presentation. Some of you that answered the questions, I haven't forgotten about you. You will get a gift, a parting gift. And we have some information in there, some cards to provide to you as well, okay? Thank you so much. Any questions for Saturday night? So with CAPS, we service individuals, you'll be surprised, from the age of 3 to 18. If they're 18, they're in the Yes Waiver program. But when you imagine 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, suicide, like I said, does not discriminate with age. And of course, the silent department, they go from 18 all the way to adulthood, right? So